I want to get us started here. And so welcome everyone to the call, a lot of familiar faces. So thank you for joining us for our Career Journeys Talk with Tyler Terens, sports broadcasting. And I know we've got obviously Media and Society, one of the biggest majors and minors on campus. And so a lot of you interested in this route, this career track. And so I think it'll be great for Tyler to share his path from Hobart and William Smith to where he is today, and hopefully give you some great advice along the way. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. All right, so with that, turn it over to you, Tyler.
All right, thanks, Brandy. As you said, I'm a broadcaster for the Chicago Fire in Major League Soccer. I actually just got the job about a month ago. I found out on March 6th. But I want to start at the beginning at HWS because my story, unlike a lot of people in the industry, is a little bit of an odd one, especially considering I got into communications and broadcasting, and one of the best communication schools in the country is 45 minutes down the road from HWS. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I got to Hobart. I knew I wanted to be in sports in some fashion. I was on the soccer team. I wanted to be a sports psychologist for a hot minute. I wanted to maybe be a coach. I wanted to do, a million different things, from basically my freshman to my junior year. And I just really didn't know, which was a thrill for my parents and everybody involved. But I'm kind of glad that I didn't know what I wanted to do because it forced me to try out a bunch of new things. And, before I get into the story, junior year, when I really called my first game, if you will, I ended up being the public address announcer for Hobart basketball, and fall sports were responsible for helping out winter sports, whether it be, cleaning the floor or public address announcer. And that was the first experience that I really had, behind a mic in some sort of setting. And I loved it. I was a huge basketball fan. I loved to just be around and, feel the roar of the gym. And, Richie Bonney and Steph Thompson and all those guys were having an unbelievable year. And it was just electric to just be inside the gym. So that was really fun. And I got a $750, an hour check at the end of it. So that was really nice as well. But with all that said, I still at that point didn't say I wanted to be a public address announcer. I didn't want to be a broadcaster. I still didn't know. Lo and behold, I had 3 knee surgeries before I was 22 years old, and I was just coming off my third, heading into junior year. And we went up to Cortland for a scrimmage, and me and Joey Busuttil, class of 2017, as well as Tyler Niles, 2016, were all injured. So the 3 Musketeers decided to go up to the video booth, and we were put on video duty. And the exact words from Coach Griffin at the time were, "Shut up and film the game." And obviously, Joey and I decided to put our own little spin on it, and we decided to do a fake broadcast of the entire game. We turned the camera on ourselves. We, had fake water bottles as microphones, and we did an entire broadcast. Joey put on an English accent that sounded Australian half the time. And I did a very over-exaggerated play-by-play that just was absolutely heinous. And we do have film of this game, and it will never be shared with anybody in public. Anyway, I had the most fun in my entire life. We ragged on every single guy on the team. It was just an absolute blast. And we listened back to it on the bus ride home from Cortland going back to Geneva, and all the guys had a great laugh, and it was a lot of fun, and it was a comedy sketch, if anything. Griff literally yanked me by my collar as we were walking off the bus, and I thought that he was going to yell at me for what was a borderline inappropriate broadcast. And what ended up happening was he said, "I think you might be onto something here." I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "I think that you should pursue a career in broadcasting." And I said, "Griff, I love you, but this is the craziest thing you've ever said. I mean, this was a comedy sketch. There's no way. We just, pulled this out of our butts for lack of a better term." And he kept hounding me, and he said, you're passionate, you have a great voice, you already did the public address announcing thing, this seems like a great opportunity. And I said, there's no way, there's no way I could just walk into that. What kind of infrastructure do we even have set up at HWS for me to be able to do that? And I didn't, at that time, I don't even think I was aware that there was a, student radio station where you had the opportunity to call games. I knew that, there were DJs who would go in and play some music every now and then, but to call games, I wasn't totally sure if that was a thing. And he said, we have a great alumni network, and specifically a few guys who played sports at Hobart who could probably help you in this path. And I took his word for it because, again, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I figured, why not? What's the worst that can happen? So he set me up with Coach Hanna, who was the athletic director at the time. And Coach Hanna, for those of you who have not had the opportunity to interact with him, is one of the greatest human beings, and he just has the biggest heart. All he wanted to do was help. And he put me in touch with a guy named Jonas Schwartz, who I believe is a class of late 80s, early 90s. not totally sure, but he is the host of a show called Daily News Live on Sportsnet New York. And the moment that I emailed Jonas, and I didn't even expect, to really get a response, he was over the moon to try to help a Hobart grad succeed in the sportscasting industry. And that was my first peek into what the alumni network within Hobart William Smith like really meant. I mean, this guy was more excited about the potential of me getting into the sports broadcasting industry than I was. I mean, he was all over me. All he wanted to do was try to help, and he was terrific. And I studied abroad my spring junior year. I went to Copenhagen, had the greatest 7 months of my life. And while I was over there, I was in the process of trying to apply for this internship to SNY. Jonas was able to put in a referral, but he, couldn't just give me the job. So I still had to do an interview. I did a mock interview. Brandy, I might have been with you, or it was with Jack. I think it was with you, right? And I said a couple of things that I should not have said, and that's why we did the mock interview. And then I killed the actual interview, and Brandy was a huge help in doing that. And I got the internship. And once I was there and interacting with Jonas and the entire newsroom, I like fell in love with the energy of live TV. I didn't necessarily want to do studio shows as much. I still wanted to do play-by-play, but just being in the building and being a part of it was excellent. I was doing nothing near what I actually wanted to do in being on camera. I was logging games, and it was more or less just sports data entry. I was watching highlights of the Mets and the Yankees and literally just typing things into the computer. But I mean, there's worse data entry to do in the world. So basically what happened was once we lost my senior year in the conference semifinals, I immediately hopped into the booth because all I wanted to do was to try this play-by-play thing out. I mean, other than that makeshift broadcast that we did at Cortland, I had no experience whatsoever. And there were so many kids all over the country who were at Syracuse, Northwestern, Georgetown, all these great communication schools who had so many more repetitions and much more experience than I did. And all I wanted to do was get in the booth. And as soon as we lost, my first game in the booth was doing color commentary with Ted Baker for the women's soccer Liberty League Championship. And I had a great time, but I knew that an analyst wasn't going to be my role because, as you know, while I did play the game and I'm more knowledgeable than most play-by-play guys, having played college soccer, Division III soccer player is not going to get you very far in the analyst role. You need to have more credibility than that. So I wanted to do play-by-play. So the first play-by-play gig that I did was NCAA tournament. It was Roger Williams against Stevens while William Smith was hosting a regional. And then I did a doubleheader for the women's and men's basketball team. So I did basically 6 hours of play-by-play actually on the air, and it was a 12-hour day. And keep in mind, this is second semester, or right on the border of second semester senior year. We had just finished up. I was no longer a college athlete, and all my friends were, having the time of their lives, and I missed out on a lot of social opportunities to try to pursue this. And I got done with that 12-hour day, and I blinked and it was over, and I didn't even realize that I had missed, an entire day of being with my friends and just enjoying a weekend. And again, I got another $750 check, and it was like $36 at the end of the day. And I just said, you know what, if I can make a living out of this, and if I can get this paycheck to be a little bit more than what this is, I think that this could work. And this is a career that, if you're going to do something you love and it's not work, that's the goal, right? So from there on out, I just fell in love with everything about play-by-play. I did hockey, I did basketball, got as much experience as possible. I ended up getting a production assistant role at SNY because I did a decent enough job that they brought me in for an interview. And then while I was doing that, I ended up getting a job. And for those of you who are interested in broadcasting, I'm not sure how many, but I can remember just spending hours in the cafe teaching myself GarageBand and trying to put together a reel that I could send to these employers, because every single employer that I was emailing said, "Where's your tape?" And I tried to send them an entire file of a game, and they were like, what are you doing? Like, you need to cut this down into 6 minutes and let me listen to a couple of highlights. And there was nobody really to teach me how to do that. So I basically had to teach myself. I spent so much time in the cafe emailing every single exec and whatever it might be. And I eventually got a job as the play-by-play broadcaster for the Trenton Generals of the Atlantic Coast Baseball League. And for those of you not familiar, it's like, the Cape Cod League is the best college league with the kids during the summer. And this was like 17 steps below that. But I still had a fantastic time. And I remember my first broadcast out of school, I had to literally climb the backstop at the baseball field to propel myself into the press box because the groundskeeper locked it when he left to go, for whatever reason. He went on vacation and I couldn't get in. But the window was open. So I literally scaled this press box to get in just so I could broadcast my first game. But what I soon learned was that as much as I love baseball and I love the Mets, I wasn't totally keen on doing a 162 game baseball season. my true passions are soccer and basketball, soccer being at the forefront. So I said, all right, like, this is great. I had fun with the baseball, but I need to really try to get into soccer and basketball. So I then worked a number of other Hobart connections. Dale Jordan, who was the assistant coach at Hobart Soccer for 2 years, had just gotten the job at Stevens Institute of Technology. So after I graduated, I reached out to Dale and I said, is there any way you can help me get the play-by-play job for Stevens men's and women's soccer? He said, no problem. I'm on it. Lo and behold, I ended up doing that for $40 a game. Holy Cross, Ruben Burke, who graduated in 2016, who now is the head coach of Connecticut College. He was an unpaid volunteers assistant coach at Holy Cross. And I said, Ruben, is there anything you can do to help me out? All I need is repetitions. Like, I know the game. I'm raw, but I'll bring a lot of passion to the broadcast. Like, tell me what you can do. Was able to hook it up. Another Hobart grad who just was more than willing to help. And I actually played with Ruben. He was a senior when I was a freshman. And then the last one was Princeton. And that was just sort of on a whim. And I told him that I played, and I did a couple of play-by-play for them, but mostly analyst. It was just good work to be on live streams and to just get that experience. So I traveled up and down the East Coast for my first fall that I was out of school. And then I got a big break, and I was named the voice of the women's basketball team at University of Vermont on 6:20 a.m. WVMT, making $100 a game. So we're slowly but surely starting to increase my pay here. But I was still working 2 side jobs. I had a horrific incident on Craigslist with whatever, apartment I tried to get into in Burlington. So I was sleeping on the couch of a couple of kids who also worked for Vermont who were my age. And then the spring started to roll around, and, for broadcasters, it's basically minor league baseball or bust. And I didn't want to do baseball. And I was really trying to get into soccer. And Coach Griffin from the Hobart soccer team had a great saying, only doing is doing. And I sent 1,000 emails to different soccer teams. And then I said, you know what, I'm sick of sending emails. Nobody's responding to me. So I cold called the front desk of the NWSL, which is the women's league, because I had heard that the broadcasts were moving down there. Nobody was answering my emails from the USL, MLS, NWSL, any soccer league in the country, you name it, nobody was answering me. So I cold called, and I basically, got passed along to 4 different people and and sent my tape into somebody. I didn't hear anything for 3.5 weeks. I was freezing my tushy off in Burlington, Vermont, even colder than Geneva, believe it or not. And I was starting to have doubts. And I said, is this sustainable? I'm going to be able to do this and make $100 a game for the next 3 years before I get my break. I talked to a family friend at Fox Sports who was a big time executive, and he kind of tried to persuade me into producing. He said, play-by-play is a really tough gig, and you really need to grind it out if you don't get a break early on. And, I kind of said to him, and I remembered those days in Bristol Gym and on Cousins Field when I was broadcasting those games. I said, this is what I want to do. I don't think I'll be happy being a producer. I'm beyond passionate about play-by-play. And then, after 3 weeks of not hearing anything from the NWSL, I finally get an email at 11 o'clock at night. And it makes sense now that I got to know this executive producer, that he's just one of the crazier dudes I've come in contact with. And he sends emails around midnight every single day. And he says, we love your tape. We want you to come down to Florida and call professional soccer games for us. And that was the big break that I needed to be able to, be seen by more people and get an incredible amount of reps. And the company that I worked for down in Florida, they did all their games off site. So what that means is I wasn't going to the games anymore. I wasn't driving all up and down New England doing Vermont women's basketball in every gym. I wasn't driving up and down the Northeast. I was sitting in a 4x5 closet, sort of like Anthony Dufresne's jail cell in Shawshank Redemption, calling games thousands of miles away from where they were actually happening. So I had to learn a whole new way of broadcasting a game and being completely raw. And between us, like, I was not ready for that job. But they were a company that was starting to get more and more contracts and get more and more teams and competitions to sign up with them, where they were going to broadcast the games, and they needed more broadcasters. So they were willing to grow with me and sort of go through the growing pains that I was going through, as well as them on the production side, because we were all learning at that point. And that's where I sort of started to catch up to some of the people who were in the broadcasting industry and went to these great communication schools like Hobart, or like Syracuse and Northwestern and everything like that. I was calling 155 games a year, which is unheard of for soccer. It's normal for a baseball season, but for soccer, that doesn't exist. Soccer seasons are 30, 35 games, but because I wasn't traveling, I went from calling a game at 7 o'clock in Charlotte to calling a game at 10 o'clock in Phoenix, and all I had to do was walk down the hall. So what it did was it allowed me to get those repetitions. And whether any of you are involved in production, if you want to do editing, if you want to do, whatever it might be in the television industry, unless you're going to these schools that have all that, there's no TV newsroom at Hobart that's set in place, but that's okay. You can still get experience doing other things. And you know, one of the biggest things that I took away from, you know, to where I got now is that everything can be learned, you know, as long as you're willing and as long as you're communicating and it's okay to say, I don't know how to do this. And somebody's going to teach you. And then as long as you keep an open mind throughout the entire process, you can catch up to the people who might have a couple of steps up on you, who did have that opportunity at a bigger school. But as you can see, the alumni connection at Hobart, as well as simply just being willing and open to trying new things and to continue to foster that creativity, which of course Hobart and William Smith is known for. It all sort of rolls into one, and you'll find yourself being able to accomplish these things outside of the walls of Hobart and William Smith, like while you're actually doing it, which is the coolest part. And then eventually I was in Florida for 3 years, and you know, I was starting to get a little anxious that I wasn't taking the next step, because I was getting better and better. So people were telling me, but I wasn't getting more opportunities. I got one opportunity with ESPNU, making my first national television appearance at 25, but that was because somebody's wife was going into labor, like literally that day. And I got a call from ESPN saying, we need you in Waco, Texas for a Baylor, Kansas women's soccer game in a week. Can you make it? I said, of course I can make it. But after that, I really didn't get any more opportunities that I was looking for. And I kept swinging and missing. And everybody said, you're doing everything that you need to do. You just need to wait for your break. And there were 3 MLS jobs that were open for the season: Nashville, Inter Miami, and Chicago. Nashville and Inter Miami were totally new teams. And I was in Fort Lauderdale, and I had a bunch of connections with that team. Struck out. Nashville, executive producer from the USL, who I became great friends with, was you know, and I thought was a home run, and I almost thought that job was locked up. He gets pressure from the higher ups and the owners. They wanted to hire a British guy, you know, who was working for Sky Sports and BBC. Struck out again. Chicago was the last one that was left. I had another great connection with them. Struck out one more time, and I was beyond defeated. I called my dad. I was like almost in tears. I couldn't understand why I didn't get this job. I was being told that I was one of the better soccer voices in the country, but nothing was happening. And, you know, it was actually my mom who said, you know, things happen, you know, deals fall apart. I said, Mom, like, these deals aren't falling apart. These teams are too big. That doesn't happen. Moms are always right, as we all know. And the deal fell through. Whoever Chicago had, ESPN wouldn't let him out of his contract. And I get a call from Tony Meola, who used to be the goalkeeper for the U.S. men's national team, and who I had started to develop a good relationship. He's also from New Jersey, like me. And he called me on a Monday and said, Chicago's going to call you as soon as we hang up the phone. Be ready. This is the break you've been waiting for. And Tony was right. They called me instantaneously as soon as we hung up the phone. They called me on a Monday. I flew out there for an interview on a Thursday. And I found out that I got the job on a Friday, and that was a month ago. And it was just a total whirlwind and totally up. I'd adopted a dog at this point, thinking I was going to be in Florida for another 2 years, and I unfortunately had to give him back, which still bothers me today. And I probably could have taken care of him with the pandemic, but we didn't know that was going to happen. Anyway, yeah, so I mean, like, that's more or less my journey in terms of where I've gotten to now. I got to broadcast one game for Major League Soccer season, you know, and I actually got to go to the game, which was a real treat for me, since I got to do that basically twice a year out of 155 games that I called. And I got to go to Gillette Stadium. I'm a big Jets fan, so going to Foxborough and going to Gillette was a little nauseating for me, but also very cool at the same time. And I got a full-time job from Chicago, which is, you know, with you know, like, I've been freelance since I graduated, so getting benefits, getting the whole experience, getting taken care of a team, getting paid to move, was all very new for me. And now being part of a corporate life and having to do Zoom calls, and, you know, I have more people that I need to answer to, is all an adjustment period for me in itself. But you know, in terms of, you know, how I got to where I am, and I actually did a Zoom call with Hobart Soccer yesterday, Brandy, and, you know, and Coach Griffin asked me, he said, how did Hobart help you? And I said, I don't really know if I would be here if I went to Syracuse, if I went anywhere else in the world, because, you know, the connections that that Career Services were able to set up for me, that Coach Hannah was able to set up, doing a mock interview with Brandy, and also just being in the environment of Hobart William Smith. I mean, you know, I didn't have experience broadcasting games, but I did have experience being vocal, being concise, and being passionate about what I had to say in a classroom full of 10 to 12 kids. And, you know, having to do prep work, and having to do, you know, having to come to class prepared, and then be involved in the conversation. And those, you know, while it might not seem like those are totally parallel, they're very much related to each other, because, you know, a lot of people think that broadcasters just sort of roll out of bed and start talking about the game. I do about 4 or 5 hours of prep work leading into, each game that I call, which you can, more or less relate to having to do the reading for a psychology class, having to do the reading for a religion class, or having to do the reading for Professor Burdett's, 400 media and society class. So it all sort of came together, and people are shocked when I tell them that I went to Hobart College. They're like, why didn't you go to Syracuse? I said, first of all, I would never trade my experience in for anything in the world. And second of all, I think that being at Hobart and not having to wait in line for 12 different kids who also wanted to go into play-by-play, I took the broadcast equipment, to RIT for on a random Tuesday night, because I knew the crowd was going to be great, and I was just like in a really good rhythm, and I wanted to just call as many games as possible. And Greg Cotterill, the station manager, said, "Go ahead, take it, knock yourself out." And it was just one of those things where, at Hobart, like, while you might not have a $3 million newsroom like Michigan State, and I actually zoomed into one of their classes recently, and I was like, you guys are, light years ahead of where I was. If you want to do something at Hobart and they don't necessarily have it set up, people are going to help you do it, and you're going to get the most amount of experience possible, and you're going to be able to learn with that experience, not necessarily in a classroom taking down notes on how to be a play-by-play broadcaster, but like Coach Griffin said, only doing is doing. You actually go and do it. If you want to be an editor, just try to edit as many things as possible while you're at Hobart. Find somebody who, is in a video class and see if you can edit stuff for them, whatever it might be. But yeah, I am beyond grateful to Hobart, Coach Griffin, Brandy, Career Services, every single little thing that I got help with while I was at HWS clearly led to where I am today. And again, it's just, it can't even put it into words that my experience at Hobart directly led me to where I am today. And this is my dream at 26. So it's pretty unbelievable. So that's my spiel.
Well, thank you so much. And that's a great story. And I love that, the access that you have on a smaller campus, like you said, knowing Greg and getting access to the equipment, and you're right on a big university campus, you're standing in line for that. So I think that's terrific. So for the students, I think we're a small enough group that if you want to just unmute your mic and ask your questions, you've got a captive audience. So clearly, Tyler got help along the way, and he's here to help all of you as well. So please take advantage of this.
I can ask you a question to start. Yeah. Not a student, but I'm so fascinated. Your story is awesome. It's exactly, I think, what we try to tell students, the importance of networking and being persistent and knowing that things aren't going to go the way you want right off the bat. And it's just going to take resilience. And I think your story is incredible. For those who maybe haven't played a sport and don't go into the industry that's directly related to something they're already so passionate about, what recommendations can you have for people to kind of increase their passion or direction a little bit? I know I was a soccer player too, and I think when you're an athlete, it's it makes almost any avenue that you go in a little bit easier because you have just that passion already there. And yeah. I don't know, what advice would you have if people decide to go in a different direction?
I would say just try out as many different things as possible and find what you are passionate about. Again, I was very fortunate that sort of sports played such a huge role in my life and led me to Hobart, and that I was able to sort of just build on top of that, and it snowballed. But there are plenty of people within the industry that are not I just look at them and I said, you're not a sports person. How did you end up here? How did you end up being this, massive producer for our company, or there's a great example. There's a woman named Sharna Yerke, who was a big sister of mine, who was not a sport, she was not necessarily passionate about any sport, but she was an incredibly visual person. And all she wanted to do was sort of bridge that gap between graphics and the visual experience of the viewer to the storytelling aspect of what we do, as of the broadcasters do, and then of course with the directors and of course her role as the producer. And she tried out a bunch of different things. She went to Florida State, and she just, she went into the newsroom and she basically just said, I want to get into this, but I don't necessarily know what I want to do, but I know that I want to be involved in TV. And she tried as a camera operator, she tried as a producer, a replay director. I think she even, tried to be on air for a little bit and realized immediately that was not for her. But, I think just just dive in and just try things. You know, if my story tells anything, like, you know, us doing that makeshift broadcast, that was just, I mean, it was being goofballs and defying our coach's orders to shut up and film the game. But more than that, it was just being open to just trying something different. And, you know, to try to stoke that fire and that passion. I think you only will find what you want to do if you're trying to do a bunch of different things. I mean, my little sister is graduating from a school in Philly this semester, and she has no idea what she wants to do with her life. And she asked me, she was like, "How did you find this?" And I said, "Well, like, it was, you know, like, how did you get so lucky to find something you actually love to do?" I said, "I just had to try different things." And I struck out, you know, on what I actually wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a sports psychologist. I talked to Greg Shelley, who was on campus a number of times when I was at school, and I shadowed him at Ithaca for a day, and I saw what he did, and I was like, I don't necessarily know if I want to do that. You're gonna try a number of different things that you don't like to do, and those are just important as finding the things that you do like to do, because it's gonna check the thing off one at a time. And he actually showed me around the communications setup that they have at Ithaca, and that didn't necessarily spark my interest right then and there. But again, like, I think that trying as many different things as humanly possible, you know, obviously within reason, or, you know, zeroing in on one or two broader industries and then going into that, and you know, picking the brain of people who are maybe a little bit more tenured within that industry, and seeing, you know, what they tried out, and how they sort of deduced to how they got to where they are, whether it be an editor, a producer, a replay operator, whatever it might be. I just think being open-minded and just trying things, and I don't think that there's a better school to be at than HWS that's going to sort of try to foster that creativity and that willingness.
Thanks.
Yep.
I don't know if you said it before, but what's your major?
I was a psychology major with a minor in media and society. I was a psychology major from the moment I stepped foot on campus. My dad he's a physician, so he obviously didn't use it. And I found the human mind fascinating, and I just wanted to pursue that. Even, you know, it was once junior year rolled around, and I wanted to get into broadcasting. It was a little late to change my major into media and society, but, you know, doing the minor was certainly helpful, and, you know, taught me certain things here and there about the industry, and was definitely helpful. But yeah, I think that I hope, Brandy, you're okay with me saying this, that your undergrad major isn't necessarily totally indicative, if at all, of what you're going to end up doing, but just the experience and working your brain in a different way is exactly what it's all about.
But we talk about the beauty of liberal arts.
Exactly.
What, if anything, did you do in like the summers with internships or summer jobs that could advance this career, or if you did anything like that?
You're saying like just my internship experience?
Yeah, like your summer experiences throughout your college career.
Yeah. So my freshman year, I went to go be a camp counselor at the place that I went to go, that I was a camp counselor, and I was just, you know, I just wanted to have fun and be, you know, be in a familiar place. And that was the second time that I tore my knee. So that summer ended very quickly. Sophomore year, oh wow. Can't really remember what I did sophomore year, probably nothing important. But junior year is where, you know, that's where I got the internship at Sportsnet New York, because, you know, the summer going into my senior year, that was when I did that fake game up at Cortland, and then I got in touch with Coach Hanna, who put me in touch with Jonas Schwartz, and I got that ball rolling when I think it was September of 2014. It was that fall of my junior year, and I didn't find out I got the internship until late second semester junior year. So it was a long process, and the woman that I was interacting with at Sportsnet New York had half a brain, and she had such a difficult time grasping the concept. I was in Copenhagen and couldn't come into New York for an interview during my second semester senior year. But yeah, I mean, it was, I looked at a number of different internships that I thought might be a good fit, but as soon as Jonas knew that I was interested and I knew that he was willing to help, I put all my eggs in that basket, and I was just sort of like, I want this internship. I'm a huge Mets fan. And I wanted to be a part of that, especially if Jonas was going to be there, because not only getting the internship and being able to put that on my resume, but having a mentor in the building, that was it for me. And I think that like fostered my love for broadcasting even more, because there were a couple of times where I went to Jonas. I said, "Are you busy right now?" He said, No, not at all. What's up? And I said, "Is there any way that I could just go do a couple of, mock shows, a couple of blocks, like by myself on camera in the studio?" He said, "Absolutely, come with me." And he wrangled up a couple of the camera operators, and we did it like total fake broadcast, like within 5 minutes. And that's just because he knew I came from a small school. And check this out. He ended up going to Syracuse for a broadcast journalism master because he thought that he wasn't going to make it in the industry just having an undergrad from Hobart. And my dad is very big on, getting another degree and everything like that. And he said, Jonas, said that the Syracuse degree was a waste of time and a waste of money, and that it was just experience. That's all that he needed. He just needed to be in front of the camera, and he didn't have that opportunity at Hobart, and he just needed reps in front of the camera. He learned how to edit and do things like that, but he's not editing anymore. I mean, he's the host of a show on one of New York's largest sports channels. So roundabout answer to your question, but yeah, the only internship that I really had that was applicable to what I wanted to do was that summer in between my junior and senior year. I don't recommend getting that late of a start, but that's just because of, I didn't know what I wanted to do until then. What year are you right now?
I'm just a freshman, so.
Oh, you're way ahead of the game. All right, good for you.
Other questions? Well, I have one, Tyler. You talked about, that you reached out to a lot of people. Obviously, you did a lot of networking to help get your foot in every door, right? Every opportunity has been through networking and persistence on your part. One question we get a lot from students is, how do you find that network, right? So we've got the HWS network and we're able to make some of those connections, but obviously a lot of the people you were reaching out to, these executives, people at different teams and in different organizations, weren't HWS alums. How did you identify those people? And can you talk about your process of reaching out and building that database, that reservoir to connect with?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's no more complicated than literally just spending hours on the internet and just going to these websites. And, for the Chicago Fire job, and it didn't even end up working out this way that I did this research, but I looked at who was probably going to make the decision. All right, it's the VP of Communications. All right, let's go to his bio and let's see, where did he go to school? McGill. All right, I don't know anybody in Canada. What did he do? When he graduated, he was at Major League Soccer, Soccer United marketing for 13 years. All right, who do we know at MLS? Okay, Larry Tiscornia was in Florida a couple of months ago, and I actually ended up driving him to a nearby bar because he had flown down from New York and he didn't have a car. And our executive producer came up to me and said, "Tyler, go drive these guys, down the street." And I got his phone number, and just by sheer happenstance, I knew him. I texted him. I said, "Do you know Sean Dennison?" He said, "He's one of my best friends in the world. We worked together for 13 years at Major League Soccer." Larry didn't help me get the job because that's not who Larry is. And he said, "You're going to do this on your own." But it's little instances like that. I mean, and just the more opportunities that you find yourself in, and when you leave HWS and you start to get job A, job B, you're just going to brush shoulders with so many different people. And it's, and just making yourself, endearing yourself to those people, and, asking if there's anything extra that you can do. When I was at Vermont, I was just checking in with a number of different people, whether it be the video department, ticket sales, and I would just go and stop by and check in with everybody and just sort of form these relationships. And then if there was a job that I wanted, and when I was looking for these soccer things, I asked them, I said, "Do you know anybody over at X, Y, and Z? Is there any way that you can put me in touch with that person?" And just, it slowly but surely builds. And, I felt overwhelmed when I was graduating because I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody in the industry. I knew Jonas, I had career services behind my back, and that was about it. But as once I started talking to people at Sportsnet New York, other than Jonas, I started to build some relationships with those people. And then when I was at, the 3 different schools that I was calling soccer games for, it all comes together at some point. You're building the network without even knowing it. But using the internet as your friend is just the biggest piece of advice that I can give, because all these people's bios for the most part are online, and you can see exactly where they've been. And all you have to do is just sort of connect the dots and, 6 degrees of separation, and see if there's somebody who, that might be comfortable enough to reach out to the decision maker. And that's the big piece. And just, don't be afraid, especially if it's a Hobart grad. Every single Hobart Naismith grad wants to help you. All I want to do is help you guys try to succeed in this business, because I know that the school that we come from is not necessarily known for this, but that's okay, because I know the type of people that Hobart brings in, and I know the professors, and I know the type of experience that you had is exactly the same one that I did. And all I want to do is try to help. Like, I wake up every single morning hoping that I get an email from a Hobart soccer player or a current student saying, is there any way you can take a look at my resume or try to help me, break into this, like that, because I wouldn't be where I am without the help of the previous person. And all I want to do is try to pay it forward. So, building the network is huge, and just, just trying to connect the dots, I guess is the most simple way to put it. And the internet is just such an incredible tool for anybody, and apply to as many places as possible, and just help people to no end.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. So other questions from you guys? I know lots of different class years here of students who are at different places in their career path and development, but I know, Emily, you're graduating, and we've got others who are just starting out. This is a great opportunity. Tyler has put himself out there. He wants to help, so take advantage of this.
So I know Emily wants to be in heading. Nima, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Thomas and Jonathan, what do you guys want to get into specifically, or are you just tuning in for the hell of it, or do you want to get into the broadcasting TV industry?
For me personally, I've always kind of been in really to like play-by-play. I announced football games in high school. Big Philadelphia sports fan, so have been a big fan of them, and all that has been a passion for me. As a freshman, I don't really know yet, but I'm undeclared right now. But I was going to ask you a question about you mentioned when you send out emails, you send like a highlight tape or something like that. What other sorts of things would you include? Like, say if I had a podcast with my buddies that were talking about sports for like 30 minutes or an hour, or what other things would you include in that email?
Yeah, so no, that's a really good question. I think that the email should always, at the bottom of the email should always say, a copy of my link can be found here, and you can just copy and paste it, or you can attach it, as a Google Drive, whatever it might be. And then, you can briefly say, you're going to attach your resume as well. So you don't want to totally run through all that is going to be in your resume, because they're going to end up looking at that anyway. But if there is something like that, and you're proving to be a self-starter, mention in the email, say, I also host a podcast with my friend, it's available on Spotify and on the Apple Podcast app or whatever. And, and if they want to hear more of that, then when they email you back, they'll say that. They'll say, is there any way I can hear that? And also depends on the job that you're applying to, right? If you're applying to a play-by-play job, they only want to hear your play-by-play. They don't really care about, your podcast or whatever it might be. And that's not a knock. It's just a simple fact. If you're applying to a sports talk show, opportunity, or a board operator or something like that, then that's what you want to include. So with that, I would have a play-by-play reel. I would cut that up, anywhere from like 6 to 8 minutes. And then I'd also have a reel of your podcast, about 6 to 8 minutes, maybe you doing an open, a couple of really passionate points that you want to make about the Eagles and how, they're never going to win a Super Bowl again, something like that. And just have 6 to 8 minutes of you like having a really good thing. And I did the same thing. So I forgot to mention that, before I even started calling games, I ended up starting my own show with Joey Busatil, who did the English Australian accent, and TJ Kazubski, class of 16, a show called Banter with Bus and Terens. And TJ was our producer, and Joey, and I remember it was the year that the Mets went to the World Series, which is my team. And I had this like unbelievably my face was like red rant, but my dad listened to it via the TuneIn radio app. He's like, that has to be on your reel. So I cut my own Banter with Bus and Terens reel up in addition to my play-by-play reel. So, and all I wanted was experience. So each job that I applied to, I was including both reels. So you should definitely have 2 different ones. And I still have 2 separate reels, because I've been fortunate enough to get some opportunity to do analyst work at a pretty high level, as well as sideline, because they look at me and they say, okay, he's a play-by-play guy who played in college. If we're in a pinch, we can use him as an analyst. And they've been in a pinch a number of times. And I was an analyst for a CONCACAF Champions League final featuring 2 of the best teams in North America. I have no business telling the viewer what they should be doing, but like, I got that experience, and then sideline as well, I made a totally different reel, have a different reel for play-by-play. So then when I was applying to jobs and I was like going to these MLS teams, I said, if you don't have play-by-play available, well, maybe you can also take a look at this. So always have those two things ready to go. And if you need any help in terms of the format of the reel or whatever it might be, you can just email me. Brandy has my email, and we can go from there. Be happy to help. Nima, what would you like to get into? What's your passion?
So actually I want to do criminology, so it has nothing to do with this. I'm just trying to get as much information as I can and talk to as much people as I can. So I'm a first year too. So yeah.
Nice. What kind of, not stresses you out, but like what do you most like how do I phrase this? Like what do you want to like hone in on in terms of the job industry and maybe like getting internships and stuff like that?
So I really want to do criminology, maybe go to law school too. For the internships, I don't know yet because I can't find anything about criminology. I think it's because of like college students can't get internships in something like that, I guess. I don't know though. So
I certainly don't.
I have no idea. I want to major in poli-sci and maybe have a minor in psychology. So I didn't get a psychology course yet. I'm trying to get one for next year. So
Anything with Professor Greenspan or anybody in the psychology department?
who?
Professor Greenspan?
Okay, I'm gonna write this. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Does he still work here?
I think he passed away. I feel like I don't want to share bad information, but I feel like
Oh,
I'm double checking a couple, like 2 years ago.
really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I know.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry. He's definitely not teaching.
oh goodness.
Yeah. But Nima, I do want you to know that for forensics, the head of all medicology and forensics for New York State is a Hobart alum. And so you should definitely follow up with us. We can help you connect with him. And he's
Right.
connected to all of the forensics for all of New York State and has helped students get internships with different forensic labs. Even
Okay.
downstate in Westchester, Suffolk County, and other areas.
Thank you. I'll email you.
Okay, sorry, but I certainly want you to know that there's plenty out there to help you. But
Yeah,
Jonathan
thanks.
had a chance to talk. Are you there, Jonathan?
Hello?
Hi. We're just wondering your area of interest. Tyler's asking everybody within the
Okay.
industry.
I'm sorry, I'm walking. I'm interested in mathematics, education, physics, computer science, philosophy, and the sciences in general.
I guess the easier question would have been, what are you not interested in?
I'm not really into political science and history. I like to interact with people and build relationships, so more into like sociology,
Yeah.
psychology. So
Very cool.
I was, yeah. Okay.
Great. Other questions for Tyler? No? All right. Well, anyone interested, certainly reach out to me and I'm happy to share Tyler's email with you. I would encourage you to connect with him on LinkedIn. And certainly that's a great resource for networking and building up that network. And actually, Tyler Niles has also reached out, not a surprise, and is interested in helping students and talking as well. But what happened with Joey? Where is he? And you were all moving to Chicago. Like I remember there was this group, they were all going to Chicago to do
They're all going
television.
to LA. They were all going
Yes.
to LA.
And then
yeah.
they changed to Chicago.
No, they're all still
Nope.
in LA.
And
So
Joey's still there?
Well, Joey did the internship there that summer. Joey is
Yep.
he's living in Queens, working in Bronx. He's teaching, kids who dropped out of high school at some point to get their GED, and then also simultaneously getting his master's in education.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then he was also a stand-up comedian in
Yeah.
for a while. So that was, like just to give an idea of what of the clown that Joey Busatil is, but also a very, very smart kid and one of my best friends. But yeah, he's good. And then all three of the LA guys, who went out there on a whim without a job, all carved out unbelievable paths individually for themselves, which like, and all of us just are in awe of that because they had no money, they had nothing, like they just moved out there and they made it work, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, Tyler's done our behind the scenes program out there. So he's a speaker on our panels for the music industry, which is great to just see him grow in his career.
He's killing it. He's having a lot of fun doing it too. Yeah,
Great.
it's great.
Well, thank you, Tyler. Best of luck. I hope that the games that you're able to broadcast soon and that
Me too. I'm dying over here.
and we'll certainly look for you and listen in for some of your broadcasts.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for listening, and best of luck. Hang in there. This is only temporary, and good luck with the internship and job search. And if you ever need anything, please let me know. Brandy has my email. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to help.
Wait, I have one question.
Thank you.
You mentioned Joey. I don't know who that is, but is he you said he's in like the education department. Do you think you could connect me with him?
Absolutely.
100%. That's something that okay.
Definitely. So Brandy, maybe we can get a three-way email going and I can just, Okay.
Yeah, I'll introduce you guys, connect you.
Right.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you,
You're
Tyler. Have a good day.
All right. See you guys. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.